This is something that we run as the product management team of Oracle Jet 3 or 4 times a year. And your hosts are myself, Geert-Jan, and you might know my voice from MOOCs and other tech tips and videos you may have seen about Jet. And with me is John Brock, who leads the product management team, interacting a lot with the engineers and so on as well. And so, as with every meetup, what we're going to do is we're going to start with what's new in a particular area. And what we're focusing on here is what's new in Oracle Jet 8, which has just been released. After that, we're going to look at a couple of partner reports. So we're going to hear from Roshan from Evosys and from Andre from Red Samurai about some investigation and work they've done with Jet. And then there'll be quite a few different small reports from different parts of the community, how they are using Jet, and we'll talk about some further resources and new resources you'll find useful as you're learning about Jet. And so with that, let's switch over to JB. And if you have any questions, please feel free to ask in the chat, or feel free to ask them on Twitter as well, or just interrupt and pop up and say what you would like to add to what JB says. Now, what he's going to talk about is something that would take him an hour and a half, and he has the challenge of squeezing it into 20 minutes.
Yeah, thanks, Kevin. Yeah, I gave this a dry run yesterday on an internal meeting, and it ended up taking like an hour and 10 minutes. So we'll go a little bit quicker today and not as much detail, but we can always answer questions, as Kevin said, out on Twitter or in the forums or even in the Oracle Jet Slack channel, which is also available. So welcome, everybody. I'm excited to talk about Jet 8. We released it on November 25th, so it's been about 2 weeks, or about a week, I guess, since it's been out. And there's some really great new things that have come out with it. It's a major release, and we'll get into some of the details about what we started to put into it. Really quick, if you go to the website, you're not going to see much different. The release notes will tell you which version you're working with. So if you go to the actual release notes, you'll see that. The success stories this time around, we actually added one of our own with this release in this Golden Gate, which is one of Oracle's products. Actually one of just short of 120 commercial products now released by Oracle that are using Jet. So in one way or another, which is pretty amazing that we have that many commercial products right now, but that's what we're running with, as well as all of course, the different partners and customers and so forth that we've also got listed up in here. We'll be hearing from some of those later today. On the Learn page, one of the things that was updated was this online training section on the learning paths. You're going to find, we kind of rearranged things a little bit and added a couple of things in here. The 5-part learning path that's right here, the very first one, has been completely updated to use the latest best practices and the latest code styles and so forth. I really, really like this learning path. This, to me, is one of the best ones we've ever written. It starts from scratch, just taking things from the cookbook, building out brand new applications, learning about responsive design and layout, all that kind of stuff, all the way up to building a full master detail CRUD type application, going back against a real database, and even talks about how to take some of that and put it into a custom web component that you can reuse over in Visual Builder. So quite a bit updated in that and worth taking a look at. The Soar Hire MOOC has been around for a little over a year now. Well, actually, it's been around for about 2 or 3 years, but it was updated a little over a year ago. And Geffen is working his tail off right now in bringing that up to date. And we're actually adding quite a bit of content into that for a new release that'll come out around February. So look for an update on this one on a full 3-week-long MOOC coming out in February. And then, of course, that MOOC will combine those 2 MOOCs that we have separately right now. So web components and the intro to Jet will all be in the same MOOC. Yep. And then we added in just this additional resources underneath web components. If you've done the web component MOOC or web component learning path in the past, this link goes off to a blog series by Duncan Mills that gives you a lot of best practices and things like that when working with web components. So a really great resource for working with web components there. So if I take a quick cheat and look at my list of things to make sure I'm covering everything, I am now going to move into some code itself. So one of the things that we've talked about and we've had in our developers guide for a couple of years is this concept of ARIA live regions, and it's all about accessibility. So Jet, of course, one of our big keys is our ability to be accessible and to provide accessibility features for those who are visually impaired or have other types of disabilities. And one of the things that we've always talked about, but we hadn't actually put it into our starter templates, was this concept of an ARIA live region. So with single page applications, one of the biggest problems that we have is that you can click on items in the navigation and it'll reload the main content of your application. But if you're visually impaired, if you can't see what's going on, there isn't any notice or any announcement that that page actually changed or failed or succeeded. It just, they get a notice saying in their screen reader, they get a notice saying that you clicked on the navigation. It doesn't tell you anything else. So by default now in Jet 8, if you set up a brand new starter template, you'll see in the index.html this one little div here with an ID of announce. And it has an ARIA live region that's bound using a one-way binding into this particular attribute. And you can read more about the details of how all of this works, but the bottom line is that we've set up this region. We use a style class to just kind of send this thing off into space so it's never displayed in your application, but it sets up a region that the screen reader, you can send notices into the screen reader and it will read them out. So when things happen in your application now, you can very quickly, because we've set up in the app controller a listener, so we have an event listener and it's listening for an event called announce. And then it goes off and sets that message and the manner when this is actually fired. Now inside of your applications, whenever something happens that is changing just a segment of your page, you can call off, you can use this accessibility utilities class that we provide and just say .announce, pass in the message, pass in what kind of manner you want, and it'll read it off to the screen reader through that ARIA live region, which is really slick and something that I've wanted inside of the applications for some time. If you look at the ACC utils, you'll see that all it's doing is dispatching a custom event, standard JavaScript events, one called announce, and we pass in a params object which contains that message and the manner. So really simple stuff, but now it's built into the templates and very exciting to have that available to us. The next thing that we wanted to talk about was TypeScript, and we've had TypeScript support for some time, but we've really started to bump it up and to talk about it in a different way. So now when you go to create an application, you can just do an OJEC create and some app name here, -- template equals snap drawer or whatever you want to use. That will give you a JavaScript-based application or a scaffolded up JavaScript application. All you have to do is add -- TypeScript to the end of that command, and it will scaffold a full-on TypeScript-based application. That came in Jet 7.2. You can actually do that starting in Jet 7.2. But what we've also added in 8.0 is the ability to scaffold custom web components using TypeScript as well. So now, if you have an application that's already been scaffolded and you are inside of that application and you say, OJEC create component, something like mycomp or something like that, this command will automatically detect if the application is written in JavaScript or if the application is written in TypeScript. If it's in TypeScript, it will scaffold up a web component skeleton in TypeScript for you. Fantastic way to kind of just take a look at some of the different syntaxes and example code and things like that on how to work with web components in TypeScript. So that will do that for you. If the application was written in JavaScript, it will create a JavaScript application. Now, one thing that we did run into when we first started introducing our TypeScript support was that some people had already had their own TypeScript configurations in place, and they really didn't want to use what the Jet CLI was providing, because the Jet CLI is fairly opinionated in its build process and where it expects some files to be and things like that. We expect things to be in source TS and things like that. So if you have your own configuration, you can still use that by doing an OJet build and then -- no TS compile. Just run that flag or include that flag on your build or your serve, and the Jet CLI will not do its TypeScript compilation. It will just pass that off to whatever it is you plan to do with your TypeScript compilation and your configuration and so forth. We do have some new stuff coming later, probably around 8.1 or 8.2 in this area, where we'll be providing some custom hook capabilities for TypeScript compilation as well, as to make it a little bit more configurable instead of just an all or nothing type situation that we have right now. But that's coming along for the TypeScript folks. Probably the biggest change in 8.0 is a move to ES6. So in 8.0, Jet defaults to ES6 now. Everything that we do out of the box is out of our starter templates, off the CDN. Everything that we do is going to be defaulting to ES6. However, we still have quite a few internal products and also customers and partners that have to support IE11. That's been our biggest pain, that we have to support IE11 for some time, and so we've always, up until this release, transpiled all of our stuff down to ES5 so that we could support everything in all of our browsers in one place. Now we feel that we've reached a point where we can support all of the modern browsers by running in just ES6 by default, and then if we detect IE11, we will fall back to a pre-transpiled ES5 version of Jet that we also distribute. We also load up all the polyfills for web components and drag and drop and a whole bunch of other things. There's like 6 different polyfills that have to get loaded in order to support IE. So there's all these different things that have to happen. If we detect IE11, there's all this extra loading that goes on that we don't have to do by default now. So it makes it a lot lighter. It makes your application load a little bit faster and run a little bit faster, because most of your modern browsers, they expect to run with ES6, and they actually are more performant in their engines these days and in their renderings. So that's what we're defaulting to. The developer's guide has a really big section on talking about all of this and how to work with migrations and things like that. If you've written your Jet application using the CDN, the Content Delivery Network, you don't have to change a thing. You just update your CDN string to use the latest Jet version, and we take care of all of this switching for IE and everything else automatically on the CDN. If you're not using the CDN, there are a few extra steps where you have to copy this little chunk of code in here with this function and this variable into your main.js. But that's all listed in the migration chapter of the developer's guide. So if you go to the developer's guide all the way at the bottom, you're going to see migration, tooling migration, and this is all covered in here. One thing to point out really quick, because we've had a few people trip over this, and thank you very much to Andre Baranowski's for pointing this out as well. Step number 5 in the developer's guide today, this will be fixed by the end of the week. So if you're listening to this recording later, it may very well be fixed. But this step, if you just use this command for creating a temporary app, you'll have some problems. We really need you to use that template command at the end, or the template flag at the end of this. So instead of just doing OJet create temp app, which would use the blank template, it still works, but it'll use a, if you just went temp app, it would use a blank template, which does not contain a app controller.js. It also does not contain any configuration for routing. So you want to make sure that you just add in -s template equals. I would go with nav drawer or nav bar for setting up a template, a base template. that makes sure that you've got routing configurations. You could go with basic as well instead of blank, but basic, while it does have an app controller, it does not have anything with routing in it. So you kind of want to have those in there. And like I say, we'll have a fix coming up for that at the end of this week, so the documentation will be correct at that point. Let's see, any other questions on the ES6 stuff? Because that's, to me, that's actually a really big deal as far as where we're going in that direction. That's where everything that we're doing going forward is ES6 based. So, and in all reality, we're actually doing quite a bit of stuff with ES8. So you can do async await, you can do maps and sets and all those other fun things that you can do with the code. It's actually pretty nice in how you can write your code now and how you can make it work. Cool. So one of the things that when we started working with all of this, one of the things that that we wanted to add was an extension for VS Code. Now we've talked about this in the past, and we've actually had some beta versions of it that you could download on the off the OTN site. I'm very happy to announce that we are now part of the Microsoft Visual Studio Exchange. So you can go out to their marketplace and install Oracle Jet Core extension for VS Code directly. Matter of fact, we're just announcing that this week. We haven't really told anybody that we're out on the marketplace, and yet we've already got 268 installs. So this is really fantastic as to how things are going and how many people are starting to use this. The latest version that came out with Jet 8, which is version 2.01, that you'll see right here, has some really cool stuff built into it, and it's a bit of a preview into something that's coming later next year. I hope to have it out in Jet 8.1 in February, but what's coming is some audit capabilities. So we are building a full-blown Jet audit framework. The audit framework has the ability to build your own rules, run them in a CI/CD pipeline environment, connect them into something like SonarQube, all these different kinds of things that you can do for writing audit rules against your code. It will audit CSS, JavaScript, and HTML at the moment. And in the latest version of the VS Code extension, we've built in the audit to this extension as well. So if I go into something like, let's go to index.html here, you'll see under output, there is now the capability to choose a Jet output console. And it'll tell me live while I'm actually coding if I've got any problems in my code running against this audit framework. So in this case, if I come down to something like this toolbar, if I mistyped that and I said toolbars, you'll see not only this little underline, the 3 underlines there, hopefully you can kind of see that if I move out of the way, that will tell you that it says this is not a known Jet component. It actually looks for this OJ dash and then says, hey, wait a minute, that's not one that we actually know what that is. Are you sure that's what you want to do? You'll also notice that live in this output, it actually gave me that same information. It works on a per file basis instead of on a per full application, which is what the actual audit framework would be, a command line interface where you can actually run a thing called OJAF, OJAF, and then pass in a bunch of configurations for it, and it'll run a report against your entire application. But if you go against something like, here's an old Jet 3.2.0 app, which is pretty darn old. If I pull up the index.html for that, you're going to see immediately within the problems window here that it came in and gave me all this information. Here's a knockout binding CSS was found. You should be using a colon class binding instead, or things of this nature. This is all done in index.html. It will also, if you click on where the problem is, it'll take you directly to that problem within your code. It opens up the file and tells you exactly where it is. So some really cool stuff in audit. And we'll have more of that information coming. It'll also be included in the new MOOC and a few other different things going on. So some really fun stuff going on with that audit framework coming down the road. Gerhard, I think I've taken up my 20 minutes. Let me see if I've covered everything. Yeah, I pretty much have. There are a couple of new components. You can learn about those in the release notes. Definitely take a look at those. We're excited about this new select single. It's got some really amazing templating capabilities for kind of list of value type areas and things like that. So take a look at those. They're mentioned in the release notes, and you can find them in the new cookbook.
Thank you very much. I found especially the audit framework sounding very promising, and everyone interested in finding out more about it, it's going to be included as well in the MOOC that we're working on to be released in February next year. So we don't have that much time. Let's switch over to Andre first to talk about work that Red Samurai has been doing. So I think you can take over the sharing, Andre.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so Andre is going to talk a bit, especially about Oracle Forms and the services that Red Samurai is providing to help modernize those applications. And I know that a couple of people are actually on this call, especially to hear about this. So let's hand over to Andre for about 5 to 10 minutes.
Thanks, Gerhard. So Andrei Baranowski, Red Samurai Consulting. We are a team of experts focusing on Oracle products and technology. So let me jump directly to the topic. So in general, we do forms modernization for quite many years, probably more than 10. And we were doing a lot of modernization to Oracle EDF, but these days we see that demand from customers is changed, and we are starting to do modernization to Oracle JET. And actually, the good thing about Oracle JET in this context is that JET runs on the client side, right? It's JavaScript, and if you look into how Oracle Forms application works, so they have a lot of functionality that kind of also runs on the client side. So when user works with the form components or with the table, user can navigate through the fields on the screen just with the keyboard, switch from one input field to another, move across columns and press buttons, and user doesn't need to use mouse for that, just use the keyboard. And it was very tough to implement this kind of requirement with client-server application. But what we see with Oracle JET, because it's, as I said, it's all on the client, it kind of looks very promising. So we can actually achieve a similar user experience as users had with Oracle Forms. We can do it in Oracle JET because it's way easier to control user actions and keyboard navigation. Right, so that's what I'm excited about in this area. And another thing, the way how the forms are usually migrated, because forms applications are huge. So it could be 500 or 1,000 forms, and physically it's just not possible to go and migrate or modernize or rewrite forms application in one go, and like from the beginning to the end, and then move to production. So usually what you would do, you would go in stages, and you would modernize, let's say, one model and another model and so on. So you would go step by step. And because the way how Oracle Forms work, they run in the applet, and this applet runs on the client, on the browser, right? And with JET, you also run on the client side with JavaScript. So it kind of becomes easy to communicate between Forms and JET. So technically, you could have, let's say, main UI shell written in Oracle JET. Then you may get the menu structure, and from that also written in JET. And from that menu structure, you could open either Oracle JET screen if it's already completed, or if you still have old implementation, then you may open Oracle Forms screen. And all this can be rendered within Oracle JET UI shell. And and more than that, you can also have communication from Forms to JET. This means on the same screen, you may have Forms screen, and somewhere below or on the right side, you may have new screen implemented with JET, and you can send events from Forms to JET or from JET to Forms. Or the same from if you have menu structure implemented in Oracle Jet, you can pass a variable from the menu item to Oracle Forms, and based on that, you can filter data. And later, once user works in Oracle Forms screen and they press some button, you can pop event up and send event from Forms to Oracle Jet. And based on that event, you may do some action. For example, you may close menu item, or you may do some additional checks and so on. And Oracle Forms, they support JavaScript events. You can define in PL SQL JavaScript events, as you see in the screenshot. And also you can raise, you can handle JavaScript event that comes from the outside, and you can send or raise event from PL SQL to the client. Right? And on the client side, you can raise event by referring to the forms applet and then using function name raise event, provide event name and payload, and then it would send the event to Oracle Forms applet and it would handle it. And on the other side, you can have handler method in JavaScript, which could be invoked when event is coming from Oracle Forms. So this is how you would do the integration. And in general, what would be my advice for Forms modernization path is that you should not try to do it in one go, just from the beginning to the end. You should plan carefully which model you would like to move first, and then you go with that model to production, get feedback from the users, and then move on with the next models. And typically, you would wrap your application in new UI shell, implement dashboard, new menu structure, and from the menu, you would I would recommend to open Oracle Forms as if they are not yet completed, and move to Jet. And you would run both systems in production for some period of time until all the job is done, and at the end you could switch completely to Jet or VBCS. And another thing, Visual Builder Cloud Service is also getting more popular, and we see more requests these days. And with Visual Builder Cloud Service, you build Oracle Jet applications, but it's more like it's declarative approach, and this helps to speed up implementation and avoid some errors and so on. For example, if you need to build huge system like 1,000 forms, it would take time to build it in pure Jet. And for this kind of use cases, or when you want to extend Oracle applications, you could also use VBCS for that. And yeah, in general, one more advice is you should try to reuse as much as possible existing logic in PL SQL, because usually when you have forms application, you would have logic that would sit in database. And I would advise you should not go and try to rewrite all this logic. Just you have the option to expose REST services from the database with Oracle REST data service, or you could have Node.js frontend or ADF-BC REST, depends what you prefer, and then you just call into those REST services from the Jet UI or VBCS, and you keep reusing the business logic from the database, and on top of that, you build this new and nice UI. So that's all the short tips and tricks information from my side, and yeah.
Thank you very much.
Questions, you can contact me anytime.
Thank you very much. So there's a question from Leandro. Just wondering if you are saying that you embedded form applets inside a Jet application or vice versa?
Yeah, you would embed form applet into the Jet application. Because Jet application is HTML, so you can put form applet into Jet. So
Leandro, I would highly recommend that you contact Andreas. So you have all his details here. He's really somebody you can speak to on this topic. And anyone else here who's interested in hearing more about this, all his contact details are here. So let's switch over now to, and many thanks, Andre. Let's switch over to Roshan. Maybe you can take over. I've unmuted you. I'm trying to. And I probably muted you again.
Hi, everybody. Yeah.
Yes. Maybe you can take over the meeting if you want to show something and tell us about how you and Evosys are using Jet.
Yeah, sure.
Perfect.
Yeah. So It'll be a really quick one. And like Evosys is into implementing Oracle Cloud applications and consultancy. So we have come across multiple requests from customers telling that they have some custom requirements that cannot be, are not part of standard solution which Oracle provides. So that's when we Evosys pitch in, and we offer them Oracle Pass, where we develop their uh, custom request using Oracle Pass. Previously, we used to do it on ADF, but now recently, since we've heard of Oracle Jet, we are trying to move into Oracle Jet, where we'll be using our service layer as Spring's MVC, and the UI will be on Oracle Jet. So we have a couple of requests. I mean, we've already uh, implemented this for a couple of our clients, where we had this custom pass request for uh, solution, some self-service solutions. Some of them are over here, where these are some of the past solutions we have implemented, and we have migrated these solutions to Oracle Jet. Unfortunately, I couldn't run a demo and show a demo because those are not accessible from here. But I've got a couple of screenshots where these are the dashboards that we have given to our clients, where this everything is built using Oracle Jet. The UI is built using Oracle Jet, and the service layer is using Spring MVC, where our we'll be using all REST web services for getting the data and posting the data into our databases. And yeah, that's it. These are a couple of screenshots, transaction page, and yeah, this is also a transaction page. And these are the dashboard. We are really excited about this because ultimately we want the user to be happy, and the users are happy. They don't care about what's going on and how what's going on in the backend. They just want to see what's good. I mean, the UI, they want to see a good UI, and Oracle Jet provides exactly that. So we are really excited about it, and we are already started implementing these solutions. And in future, we are targeting that our complete pass business will be implemented using Oracle Jet.
That's perfect. And I think one can also see from your screenshots that you can really customize a Jet application to look like anything you want, because
yes, anything you want.
It's just pure JavaScript and HTML, as you can see here. Yeah.
Right.
Well, thank you very much. Perfect little presentation. And let's switch now to Nigeria. So we're going to hear from Damilola. If you can unmute yourself, or I am doing that. Oh, wait, I think you did, and then I remuted you. And now I've unmuted you. Please take over control if you can. At the top, you'll see that you can share your screen. And maybe you can say something.
Okay.
Perfect.
Hello, everybody.
Hello. Welcome, and thank you for joining us. So this is Damilola from Nigeria, and there's an internship program. And I think the team over there gets the first prize for tweeting. I have not seen any group of people using Jet who tweet as much as you guys do. So congratulations.
Thank you very much. We just wanted to make sure that people see what amazing stuff we're doing with
yes.
Jet. So we were just excited to share what we've been building to everybody. Okay. We decided to use Oracle Jet. Well, actually, I will start first by saying the HNG Internship, it's a program that is developed to help youths in Nigeria to scale their skills. And it has extended to other parts of Africa as well, not just in Nigeria. And as we started the internship, we were put in various teams, and we just discovered this Oracle Jet team. I was kind of well interested in the team And I believe every other person also joined based on curiosity. We didn't know what Oracle Jet was all about. We just wanted to like, okay, this is an awesome way. And the HNG internship is a competitive internship. There are 10 stages in the internship, and progression in the stages is based on excellence in completion of tasks. So for us to take the bold step of learning a new tool, actually, where a lot of people were doing something that they were comfortable with, was a big step for us. So it wasn't an easy decision, but we just like, okay, we could learn this tool and then be better at it. And we ended up building one of the best products at the internship. Now, we are seeing an admin screen. The admin has logged in already. And we have also an intern screen. We built a product that could allow the admin handle interns. Apologies for that. The HNG internship, at in every internship, we take the volume of interns that applies is quite much, and they were only being handled on Slack. It is usually quite disorganized at some point, especially at the entry point, and not to a perfect organization. But we just believed that we could build something that a lot of people that could help the admins to manage the internship better. And that's why we built this tool. So you could see we wanted an app that could handle tax creation and then grading of tax at every stage. It could also handle interns seeing their tax and being able to submit their tax as well. We also built, we also integrated features that would make the admin to be able to do different categories of posts. You can post on different categories. You can create tags. You can view submissions made by interns. The admins can see the tracks that the interns are not, can create tracks for every intern. There are also functionalities for different teams. Like Oracle Jet was the team in the internship. We could have as many teams as possible created by the admin. We could see the number of interns in each team. We could regulate the number of interns that could join each team. And like I could have this, I have probably this intern in the team. And you could see that we integrated this also with Slack. That is one of those awesome features that I was still going to show you. You can actually, on the Slack page, there is what we call promotion and demotion. You can promote an intern to a stage and then demote the person. So you can actually demote someone from this app and it will show on Slack. And I will still show that later. You could see the total number of interns that are registered and a lot of other awesome features. We have the summary where you could see the charts that shows the statistics of the number of interns based on sex, based on the different tracks and the likes. So this on the admin dashboard to help the admin to be able to undo the volume of interns. So the admin can decide to promote an intern to an admin. So we have several mentors that will be using this admin dashboard. The just concluded internship had about 15,000 interns, and we had about 200 mentors. And as in the subsequent internships, we believe that we'll have more mentors on board. So all the mentors will definitely be promoted to admin level, but there will be a super admin, which we also provided for. You could also see there is a user dashboard, so I'm logged in as an intern now. This for the intern. So if you're an intern, you can see the post that the admin has created. You can react on the post, you can check the post, you can react on it, you can drop a comment on the post, you can actually react with an emoji. And this wasn't funny. I will still talk about some issues that we faced while we were coming up with all these functionalities. Then you could have tasks. You could view the tags that have been created by the admin for your team or for a particular track. This is a backend track task, for example. You could do some submission, and this was a task created some time ago to showing submission deadline has passed. And you also have that you could change your settings. You could upload your profile. This is me, and you could change your settings and everything as an intern. So, and then we see the OJ train. This was one of those features. I was one that put this up there. I integrated this myself into the application. I saw the OJ train as one of those awesome features, and it shows stage progression from stages 1 to stage 10. Like I've said, the internship is very competitive. Getting to be in stage 10 is based on excellence in your task completion. So you could decide to change your track if you do not want to be probably in backend, probably you want to be in project management or digital marketing. You could decide to do that, and then the admin will see your request. So you request for a track, and then I can go to the admin dashboard and you'll see the track request waiting. So I'm on the admin dashboard again. Let me try to refresh this and probably go to, because I intentionally did not do any slides so we could see everything happening live. So probably I will have to, I think there's something about state change concerning the Oracle Jet app. You have to log out, log in, then see some situations, some updates on your profile. So let me see if I'll see. Wow, the track request is not actually reflecting. Well, I am surprised because that was working before. Okay, I could also go to, let me show the Slack integration. That was an awesome stuff we did. So I can actually go to an intern, or let me use it by teams. Let me say this particular intern. I can decide to promote the intern. Now, the intern is on stage 10. That's the IS, so I won't use stage 10. Let me say I'm demoting the intern. This would show a notification. And this is an awesome tool, awesome tool by Oracle Jet. OJ messages, we were able to integrate it for push notifications, and it shows messages of carrying out any action. I can come to interns and probably search for myself. I can come here and do a search. If I'm looking for Damilola, for example, you have him right here. So I'm on stage 4. And if you look at this Slack channel here, I hope you all can see this. We have this test stage 4, which shows that I'm on stage 4. If I go here and promote myself to stage 5, there is already a notification for Slack that I'm on test stage 5. Probably if you can't see that, I can do this at stage 6. That's the integration we did. Very awesome. There is a notification that I'm on test stage 6. So our backend guys also worked fantastically well. We used Laravel for the backend, and it was awesome. So Oracle Jet was amazing. We encountered some issues at first when we started. Getting to understand the tool was not an easy one, especially data binding. Data binding gave some issues, but again, we were able to overcome that by the second week with the documentations as well.
Perfect.
Getting to have access to these documentations was a bit of a challenge until Sheyi gave some links that we were able to use in handling the whole project. So that's it. Oracle Jet was awesome. We had arguably the best UI of all applications built in the internship. It was the cookbook gave a lot of awesome user interfaces. Out of the box component. My favorite, like I said, it was that OJ train, this state progression. It was awesome. Then the OJ messages as well. So we would we saw that we could. So we noticed that there is no particular EcoJet community in Nigeria. We would love for at least there should be a community like the EcoJet community.
Yes.
And starting something like
that. That would be fantastic if you would set up such a community. And that's a really good transition, so we can move on to the more general community topics. Thank you very much for this presentation. It really shows that you've grasped all the details of JET and are using the components, and it's really impressive. Thank you for your work with JET.
All right, you're welcome.
Yeah, thank you very much. It's really cool.
So just to go through some other community-related items. So we've just heard from Damilola from the HNG Internship program. So this is the place where you go to find out more about that. Very interesting projects in Africa to give people really practical, pragmatic, technical knowledge and skills. And secondly, kind of related to that, there is a hackathon that we've been working on. There was one in South Africa a couple of years ago. And the same Oracle partner, Steltix, is working with Capgemini in the UK and with Contribute in Belgium. So that's Philip from Contribute, and James Neat and Phil Wilkins from Capgemini, and Fritz Helscher and Christian McCabe from Steltix in South Africa. So there'll be a really international cross-geography internship program. So if anyone is interested here, working from within a particular organization where you want to bring interns into your organization, we're setting up this hackathon. We want to keep it quite small, but if one or two companies want to join in, it's going to be focused on creating a application, a mobile app for a school in South Africa, for registering students and for taking attendance and things like that. And it's going to be created in a matter of 3 days over a long weekend with all these different teams working together, creating web components using the JET cookbook and those kinds of resources. So if you are from an organization where you want to integrate interns or new young developers into your organization to know JET, please contact us so that you can be included in this hackathon program. The plan is for this to be run in March next year. The next item on this list is that Hamid Roknizadeh from a company in Germany using JET is working on setting up a community GitHub repo where we can put all our web components across the world into one centralized GitHub repository and share them. I don't think we need a large application to manage our web components. We can just put them all into a centralized GitHub repository. And so that's a Twitter handle for Hamid if you want to reach out to him, and you'll hear more about that as well. Then the learning trail that JB mentioned, bit.ly Teach Me Jet, is where you go to get there very quickly and easily. There's also the Twitter handle. So if you're not on Twitter yet, please join, because this is where we share all the new information as it comes out. And one example of that is we have every Friday a 2-minute tech tip. So every Friday there's a new tip about something. The first few are about very basic JET knowledge, setting up a JET application, very basic things that everyone knows. But now we're getting more and more into really new information and code that no one has ever seen before. So the most recent one was about doing templating with JET. And we have some coming up about testing with JET, using Jasmine and Karma. And a book by Dan Curtis from Griffiths Waite is very useful about that. It's called Practical Oracle JET. So if you want one book that sums everything up, that's one to look into. But every single Friday, we have a new 2-minute tech tip. If anyone out there wants to join in, it's very fun to create these tech tips. So if you have any tips yourself that you can explain in 2 minutes, which is the challenge, please contact us as well, and we can include you in our long list of tech tip providers. It's a really interesting way to share information, because no one has time anymore, but everyone has at least 2 minutes. So that's really a nice, useful way to provide information within 2 minutes. The other point is, we mentioned this already, we have a new version of the MOOC coming up. So the plan is for that to be released in February next year, and we're doing the planning and the recording and everything of that at the moment. I think that covers everything. Aside from that, we have the forum, of course, and the Slack channel. So if you're not aware, we have a Slack channel as well as a forum for asking and discussing topics relating to JET.
Yeah, one other thing, Gakhan, as well. There is also, if you are, I was going to give a shout out to Anirban, but I see he has stepped off. But there is a LinkedIn Oracle JET group as well that's been gaining momentum lately. For those that might be hanging out on LinkedIn, you can join that group. We kind of cross post what's going on Twitter into that LinkedIn group as well. It's just called Oracle Jet. You can look it up and join. So that's another way of getting informed of what's going on and where we're at. We know that Twitter isn't used that much outside of the US and Europe, especially down in Latin America. And I'm very, very curious if anybody wants to hit me up with a direct message or an email, what channels folks are using, in Argentina, in Brazil and Chile and Central America as well. What is the way that you guys are learning about your technologies, and how can we help get JET information in front of you? I was just down in the Mexico Development Center in Guadalajara a couple of weeks ago, and it was like 2 people out of 60 actually had Twitter accounts. So I know you guys are doing something different. I just don't know quite what it is yet. So let us know. We'll be glad to help promote in that area as well. Let's see, so Leandro, it's too complex here. We have to look into some.
Yes, there is a lot of information, and in fact, you're going to find there might be too much information, which is quite special for a JavaScript solution. It tends to be a very nice hello world scenario for many technologies, and then beyond that, it's quite difficult. And also, what you might find when you start learning any JavaScript technology is that you only get part of the solution. And with JET, we really want to provide the whole solution for the front end. So we have a cookbook with recipes you can copy. We have tutorials. We have MOOCs. We have success stories. We have references. So you really will find everything you need when you're doing front end user interface development when it comes to JET. And maybe most importantly of all, we created this solution for Oracle itself. So all over Oracle, and many people who are on this call in this meetup right now are from Oracle too. All over Oracle, JET is being used. So if you make use of JET, be aware that we in Oracle are completely dependent on it. So this is not something that can go away like many JavaScript solutions can. So this is something we are so heavily dependent on right now. And you'll find more and more information coming out about the rebranding that is going on in Oracle. And we're doing a lot of redesigning of our user interfaces. And the technology that we're using underneath all of that is JET. So you're pretty safe if you go in the direction of JET versus alternatives.
One other thing on that topic, and I think it's really important to understand this, is that since JET focuses on the enterprise, and a lot of people are kind of like, well, what the heck does that mean to really focus on the enterprise? Well, we have to, when you're building enterprise type applications, there are things that have a tendency to either take longer to build or have longer life cycles. And so there's a lot of times where you have to have a framework or a toolkit that is going to actually still run for some time or still work in the existing code. Now, JET actually releases every 2 months, and we do new major releases every 6 months. But one of the things that we have really heavily been focusing on, especially since around JET 6.2, is backward compatibility. So for those that are internal to JET and on this call, you understand this, or internal to Oracle rather, and you understand this. For external, it's kind of an odd thing in that when we put up new releases, I can come out with all kinds of new features. I can come out with new APIs and things like that. And you'll see in our release notes where we deprecate old features and old API. The fact that we deprecate them means that they're probably not going to get a lot of bug fixes and things like that down the road, maybe a couple of years from now or a year from now. But I can never remove them from the toolkit. They will still run. that Jet 3.2 application that I showed a little bit earlier in code still runs with Jet 8. So those are things that we have to be able to still support. Now, someone who may have recently written their application using Vue.js had a very rude awakening when Vue.js 3 came out, and they're going to have to rewrite their application from scratch in order to take advantage of everything in 3, because it was an incompatible change between 2 and 3. We can't do that with Jet. I've got multi-billion-dollar applications running on this thing, and I can't just rip and replace. It just doesn't happen. So it is something that's a little bit different than some of the other frameworks that are out there. And it is definitely something that we focus very, very heavily on for Jet.
I think we're at the top of the hour. We've covered a lot of information. We've given you a lot of insights into community activities that are coming up. We have just released Jet 8. So on the support page on oraclejet.org, you'll find the release notes. You'll also find that the developer guide has been updated, and it also shows you what's new in the developer guide. Plus, there is the learning path that is updated to 8.0, and the MOOC coming up, which will also be focused on the 8.0 release. Thank you very much, everybody.
Yeah,
and
thank
JB?
you for joining. Thank you very much. Happy New Year to everybody, and a Merry Christmas or Happy Holidays. And we'll talk to you guys in the next virtual meetup in the new year.
Yes. See you next year. Bye.
Bye.